A year ago, I took delivery of my very own Alpine A110. It was around the same time that Alpine launched this version, the A110S. It's faster than my car, more powerful, it looks better. So the purpose of this video is to determine whether or not I bought the wrong Alpine. Before we get started, have you subscribed to the CarGurus YouTube channel yet? We post new and used car reviews, helping you work out which car is right for you. Go on, tap that subscribe button. My car is an entry-level model, quite a basic one. It's an A110 Pure, but it's got uprated wheels and brakes. It's got parking sensors and an uprated hi-fi, but that's about it. It cost me around £51,500, although the Pure starts at £48,140. I've done 7,000 miles or so in my car, and I love it. The base model A110 has a 1.8 litre turbo engine that develops 249 brake horsepower and 236 pounds-foot of torque. It'll hit 62 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds and run on to 155. The brilliance of the A110 is that despite being small and light, it weighs only 1,100 kilograms and is therefore fantastic to drive. It's actually really easy to live with. It's not a punishing sports car by any means. Now, I have to concede here and now, and this is painful for me to do, that the A110S does look better than my car. The matte finish and the black wheels I could take or leave, but it's the lower ride height that makes the S look so much more purposeful. My car, with lots of air between the wheel arches and the tyres, looks a little bit dainty, but this one, sitting a bit closer to the road, just looks so much more purposeful. It's only lower by 4 millimeters, but those 4 millimeters make all the difference. Mechanically, the A110S is more or less identical to the A110. They share a platform, a gearbox and an engine, although in the A110S it develops 288 brake horsepower. A good deal more power, but because the 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox isn't rated for any more torque, the A110S has the same 236 pounds-foot as the A110. It'll hit 62 miles per hour 1/10 of a second sooner than the A110 and run on to 162. Crucially, the S not only sits closer to the road, it does so on springs that are 50% stiffer and on roll bars that are twice as firm. Huge differences. The point is that the two models should have their own characteristics on the road. The S isn't trying to put right anything that might be awry with the A110. Alpine wants it to feel like an altogether sharper, more responsive kind of car. The A110S starts at £57,140, £9,000 more than a basic A110. The Alpine's cabin manages to be simple and pared back without feeling really Spartan. The floors, for instance, are fully carpeted and the car feels well insulated. It's not like a little tin box to sit in. And for me, the fundamentals are just right. The seating position, for instance, is really good. I love these Sabelt fixed back bucket seats. They're super supportive, but they're also really comfortable over long journeys. I think if you're stepping out of a Porsche 718 Cayman into one of these cars, you're going to look at some of these materials and think they're pretty low rent. Frankly, I just don't think about it. The rudimentary infotainment system is all that really lets the interior down. Based around a touchscreen, it's not the easiest to navigate and the graphics look clunky, but at least everything, the radio, the sat-nav, the Bluetooth, all work. But there's no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Instead, Alpine uses a smartphone mirroring system called MySpin. To be honest, I just don't bother with it. Inevitably, the A110S's cabin feels very similar to my own, although you do get these man-made suede inserts where my car has leather. These are quite nice. Also some orange accents to match the orange accents outside. The seats are the same, but there are 3 different height settings. In my car, I've got them on the lowest setting. In this car, at the moment, they're in the middle setting, and it means that when I sit in this one, I just feel like I'm perched slightly too high. The so-so infotainment system is the same as well. One option I don't have on my car, but which is fitted here, is Alpine Telemetrics, which gives you access to all sorts of driving data, as well as lap timing and so on. Let's begin with my car and its everyday driving attributes. The really special thing about the standard A110 is its ride quality. It's so supple. For a sports car, quite a high performance car, It's super smooth. The suspension is actually quite soft, which gives you this wonderful ride quality, and that's where a good chunk of this car's everyday usability comes from. It's not noisy on the motorway. I've already said these seats are much more comfortable than they look. All of those things make this car surprisingly easy to live with.
The A110 comes into its own on a flowing B road. You select sport mode and put the paddle shift gearbox into manual.
And you start wringing the engine out. The engine isn't dripping with power, about 250, but in such a light car, it feels really strong. And it's responsive as well. It's a good, energetic, quite exciting turbo engine. What I love about it is that it has an amount of performance that you can really use on the road. It never feels too quick for the road. The gearbox works really well, snappy shifts, both up and down. I don't have the optional sports exhaust on my car, therefore the soundtrack is a little bit flat, but apart from that, the drivetrain is really good.
Never mind sport mode. When I'm going for a blast, I tend to stick the car straight into track mode, which peels back a layer of stability control intervention.
Which means you can really start having some fun. And my God, this thing is such a lot of fun. It's all to do with that supple suspension. It's all to do with the lightweight construction. It just means that you can fling this car along a road and really enjoy that process. It's dripping with feel from all four corners. You know exactly what all four tyres are up to. The steering is pin sharp. The chassis deals with a bumpy road like nothing else in this kind of price point. I honestly have more fun driving this car on the public road than I do in lots of supercars which feel too fast, too wide, too big and too heavy. This thing for British roads is spot on. The whole car just floods you with confidence, which is great because the A110 has such approachable limits.
Ultimately, it's those approachable limits that make the Alpine such fun to drive. You don't feel like you're barely scratching the surface, which you do in a lot of modern performance cars. Question is, what happens when you give the A110 more grip and far stiffer suspension?
The A110S has both of those things, and its wider tyres also have a more aggressive compound, giving more grip in the dry, but less grip in the wet. You notice the firmer suspension from the first metre onwards. It feels very different to my car in that respect. Not uncomfortable, not punishing, just busier.
But let's put comfort to one side and find out what this thing is like when you up the pace.
The gearbox is the same, so it's just as good in this car. But this one, it's got the optional sports exhaust. And so certainly from inside here, it sounds way better than my car. There's this lovely warbling sound going on. The A110S, as I've said, doesn't have any more torque. So through the mid-range, it doesn't feel any stronger. It's right at the top end, where all that extra power is, that you notice the difference. It pulls harder. Where my engine is just starting to wilt, this one just keeps on pulling.
Faster though doesn't always equate to more fun, nor does more grip or harder suspension.
The A110S loses the standard car's very clever way of smothering a bumpy road surface. You get deflected by bumps, the body bounces up and down much more. It's far busier, far less settled in here. It also loses the standard car's very distinctive way of moving around in corners. It doesn't roll so much, it doesn't squat and dive, it doesn't rise and fall over crests and undulations, which makes the standard car just feel so wonderful to drive. But this thing, it's still a blast, I have to say. It still feels beautifully balanced, still feels really light and agile, steers beautifully. On a smooth road, on a racetrack, this A110S would have more precision, more body control, more immediate responses. But on a typical British B road, it's just not quite as fun to drive as the standard car.
So which is it to be? The slower, more expressive A110 or the faster, tied down A110S?
This is going to be the least surprising twin test verdict of the year. Yep, my car gets the nod. I know I would say that, but honestly, it's more fun to drive on the road and to live with day to day. It's far easier. It's a very special car indeed. Thank you for watching this Car Gurus video. As ever, please remember to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check out cargurus.co.uk, which is where you'll find a great deal on your next used car from a top-rated dealer.